Close the polls. This year's Fort Collins election season is over. Those political calls will finally stop, at least until the next election rolls around. Ballots were due a little more than an hour ago, and people have been dropping them off all day at the Larimer County Courthouse. On this year's Larimer County ballot, Fort Collins residents decided the fate of two initiatives, one of which would affect CSU students. Take a look.
November 1st was Election Day in Fort Collins. Many residents chose to mail in their ballots, while others dropped their ballots off at the Larimer County Courthouse. In this election, Fort Collins residents had to decide on two ballot initiatives, Proposition 300 and Proposition 103. If passed, Proposition 300 would prohibit medical marijuana centers within the city limits of Fort Collins. Centers would be required to shut down within 90 days of the vote. If passed, Proposition 103 would increase state sales tax and income tax for the next 5 years, with the intention of increasing funding to public education in Colorado. As a public university, CSU would be included in the funding increase if Proposition 103 passed.
It would begin to backfill some of the funding cuts we've seen in the last 5-6 years. A portion of the 103 revenue would go directly to higher education and would help alleviate some of those cuts that we've seen in the last few years. This would be a fairly immediate effect. I mean, the idea of 103 is that it's something to somewhat of a stopgap measure in order to help us now while we look for some long-term solutions.
And what can CSU students do to help?
They should vote. That's obviously the most obvious answer. I mean, today's the last day. We're at the end of the road here. Now it's just crunch time in terms of voting.
Now, we said the polls closed down in Colorado around 7 p.m. Tuesday, and here at CTV we have some preliminary results for you. Proposition 103 has officially been defeated in Colorado, according to the Denver Post. 103 would have temporarily raised taxes to fund public education in the state, and in Fort Collins, Proposition 300 continues to have votes rolling in. At the last check, our partners at the Rocky Mountain Collegian reported that 53% was for the ban of medical marijuana centers in the Fort Collins city limits, while 46% of the votes so far were against the measure. Tune in to CTV 11 Wednesday for the final results of the election.